Welcome back, everyone. Now, the last example for a possible service is the data service, where we will have the chance of accessing and manipulating data from several entry points in our application. I'll start by creating that service. So, just creating a new file here to call data service. And again, let me zoom in a bit. I'll import injectable from Angular to core, and I will use the injectable decorator here before I export my class, which is called data service. Now this class has a private property which holds the data in this case. Now obviously in a real application you probably would have another data source than within your service, but hey, that's just an example here. And we will get to like fetching data from the internet in the section on HTTP, so don't you worry. So here's my data, and this should really just be an array of strings where I have like summer, winter, warm, and cold, any strings you like. And then I will have my getRandomString function, which will return us a random string from that array. So I will create a random number here. And I want to create a random number, which obviously is, in this case, either 0, 1, 2, or 3, because array counting or the index of an array starts at 0. So it should be between 0 and 3, and it should not be a decimal number, but an integer, right? Well, first step is to use the math_random function. This will give me a random number between 0 and 1, so a decimal number. That's not what I want, and 0 to 1 is not quite the range I need. So first thing I'll do is I'll multiply this with the length of my data array here. Now I get a random number between 0 and, well, 4, right? Because we get 4 items, not 3. That's just the index. So 0 to 4 is almost right, but it's still a decimal number. I could get 3.5679, and I could get 4, which I also don't have. So I'll use another function, mathFloor, which will just round down every value to the nearest integer. So a 0 will stay a 0, a 1.5 will get a 1, a 1.9 will also get a 1, and a 3.9 will get a 3. So now I get a random number between 0 and 3. And then I will just return the respective string. I also want to add a function to insert a value. Let me just see, Gulp is still running, everything fine. To insert a new value. Obviously only for the runtime of this application. When it reloads, it will be gone, but better than nothing. So I will insert a value here, any string value. Wait, you should go there, thank you. And all I will do here is I will take my data and push something into that array, namely the value I'm getting here. Done. So that is how I insert and get values. Okay, now let's use that service in our components. We'll add a new div here. And I will call this data service. And this should also be service. So data service. And then here I'll have, no, not a paragraph. I will have a button where I can get a random string. So get some data or something like this. And I want to have a click event here, which will get or execute the onGetData method, which I will create. And then I'm outputting it here. So I'm binding to a data property. Let me create this real quick here. So data will just be a string. And now I will add an input field where I can insert any new string. And obviously this can then be inserted with a button, insert new data. And this button, well, it will need a clicking event on insert should be executed, and I will pass my new data.value here. Okay, so I'm accessing the value of this input field and I'm passing that to this on insert method here. Good, so let's start with the random data, let's say. Let me add the method onGetData, and we will need our data service. So I'll start here in the constructor. Private data service should be injected. Again, import was automatically added for me in my IDE here. Make sure you have to import to the data service from your data.service file. And I will also need it here in my providers area. For now, we will play around with that in a while, or in a second, I should say. So now in my onGetData method here, I will will set my data property, this one here, which is bound or expressed here, to the random data I get from my data service, get random string. Let me save this. And now if I click get some data, well, I'm getting random strings here. So seems to be fairly random. Now I also want to be able to add new data, so I'll add my onInsert method here, which is executed when I click the insert new data button here, and I just saw that I should not have that here, it should be here. Yeah, right. So onInsert method will take a value of string, the value in this input field here, of type string, and then I will use my data service to insert this value here. So I'm calling the insert function on my data service I created, and I'm inserting, or I'm passing this string I'm getting, well, from this click event here, and in the end it's just the value of this input field. And this will execute this insert function, pass this value here, and push it into this array. Now let's try this out, and let's add snowman. Insert new data, and now let's see if we get our snowman here. Oh, there he was. Get him. Let's get him again. Here is our snowman. Okay, now I copy my whole component here and paste it into my component 2. Again, add it here and here, so the name and the selector. Save this. And now let's see something. If we insert data in our component 1, in our first component here, we should not be able to get it in our second component, since we should have 2 different instances. So let me enter test here a couple of times so that we should get it fairly often. And yeah, as you can see, we're getting some tests here. But if I get data here, no tests at all. Now that was to be expected. Now if I remove the data service provider here, and instead I go to my Bootstrap file again, and I add it here, like we did a couple of videos ago, data service, also add the import. And now if I add, or if I first get some data, yeah, that works, right? So injection worked. Now let's add some tests. So we're getting some tests here, and we're also getting some tests here, because now both components are using the same instance. So here again, we get this hierarchical injection thing in work. Cool. So now we saw different ways of using that service and how we can inject them in different, or how we can create the instances in different places and then inject them into our components. I think it's now finally time to use those services to, well, create a nice little project again. See you in the videos. Bye.